This video is about a Steam game made by a small team of developers, and hey, I'm not talking about you, Hollow Knight, or Celeste. I'm talking about Furi. Now, Furi was developed by the Game Bakers, and this is actually the first game they made as a group, which is an extremely impressive feat on its own. But since Furi released in July 5th, 2016, the Game Bakers have since then made Haven, a love RPG that is... Bro, how is this similar to Dark Souls? What? They also, oh shit, it's Squid Odyssey, baby! Turn-based battles with crabs and shrimp. I turn the video off. Finna play me a real man's game. By the way, this video will contain spoilers about Furi, which I recommend playing first before watching this, obviously, because it just adds to every fight. But just some things to note is that the main reason I'm making this video in the first place is because of the unique experience that Furi gives, the art style, and just the soundtrack on its own. It's just...
You were a weapon, a bringer of death, and now you're nothing. I will keep on killing you, again and again. I am your future, an eternity of slow, painful deaths.
I hear thunder, pitter patter. Time to wake up.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here with you.
Shake your head, nod your head. It's time to go. See what they did to you? Pull yourself together. Get out of prison. Kill the jailer. Fight for your freedom. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you'll be free.
Rain, thunder. This opening scene sets up an atmosphere with the music and camera angles. All you know is that you are locked up, and some random person in a rabbit mask freed you and is now urging you to fight your way out, even giving you a sword, which may be your old sword, but who knows. The jailer is the key. Kill him and you will be free. Not a bad idea considering you were just being slapped around by that same jailer. Although it is interesting to note that the jailer said he was going to keep on killing you again and again, and that you would have a painful future of slow deaths. This could just be an exaggeration and he is simply torturing you close to death, but if he's actually speaking the truth, then he's unable to kill you permanently. And those constant deaths actually could be the main reason behind your lack of memory, being unable to remember what happened in your previous lives, as we start the game with no information on what is actually happening. Let's just take a second though to appreciate the character design here. Your character, also known as the Stranger, has white flowing hair, good facial detail, his bodysuit that glows blue, which you can toggle actually with different light settings using the Y button, his lack of footwear, and his red cape. which actually isn't a cape at all, but a jacket that's unzipped up until the top, which is easiest to see in his concept art with the zipper and the arm sleeves. His outfits look like he is some futuristic samurai, which can certainly be felt by his demeanor as he looks to be very serious. Now, looking at our rabbit companion, his design is interesting, with his purple rabbit mask that has these really menacing red eyes that obscures most of his head, except his jaw and his mouth that are seen sometimes. He wears these baggy purple pants with a black shirt, as well as some kind of arm covering or cloak. His outfit is very strange, with his mask making his identity hidden too, adding to his overall mysterious character. The main designer behind these characters in Furi is Takashi Okazaki, who is also the creator behind the 1998 Afro Samurai manga and the designer behind the TV show that followed that same manga series in 2007. Both of these are really good, and I'd highly recommend it, even if it's just to hear Samuel L. Jackson as a funny character.
Hey, that a motherfucking RPG? You got a motherfucking RPG? A RPG in a motherfucking backpack? Wait, can we talk about this?
Also, the newer Star Wars vision, something that Takashi Okazaki also worked on, which is basically just Star Wars X Samurai, but you know, that obviously came out in 2020, and the new season coming out in, I believe, 2022 or 2023. We can see a lot of similarities with Furi and Afro Samurai throughout the game that I'll talk about. One similarity regarding the Stranger is his long flowing hair that can be seen throughout Afro Samurai and on the main character of the show, Afro. This can be seen with the Stranger as well, as his hair is separately animated to have constant motion to give that same kind of flowing effect. The Stranger also never speaks, which is very similar to how Afro's mentality was, as he was a man of action, not words. Now, turning to the rabbit character, his role and personality is also based off Afro Samurai's companion. In Afro Samurai, Afro is not alone, but accompanied by the companion as he travels with him. Afro Samurai, like I said before, barely talks. However, the companion is always talking to Afro, just like how the rabbit does to the Stranger. Another parallel that can be seen is with how Afro's companion always manages to show up after any fight and before the fight and proceed to talk to Afro about the fight, just like how your companion talks to you. This calls into question again, who is this rabbit companion and why is he even here, and why is he teleporting around almost? One last thing that is interesting is the staff that he has with him, which has a microphone at the top of it, which is maybe how when he talks to you, his voice is actually so clear. Last thing to note is the gun you have. You are actually never seen picking it up or getting it at any point, so we're kind of just to assume you picked it up when you got your sword, or you know, it was just hanging out right next to your cell and you just nagged it off the wall. Now, back to the Stranger, who leisurely walks towards the jailer, which is a clear contrast to the stormy skies and constant rain, suggesting you are not panicked, but scarily calm.
Every step you've taken from that cell, I'll make you regret. You listen to me, and you listen good. You'll never escape.
As you are about to fight the jailer, you do notice him slam his pole into the area, causing some kind of shock or signal, and that can be seen bouncing off of other floating areas, which you are at the top of. You assume that this could be an alarm and that those areas are potentially how many places you need to pass through. You count not. But before, just a little on the format of the video. Furi is a boss rush game, so I'm going to be discussing 3 things for each fight, which is the story, the boss, and the music. Furi has a lot of producers that came together to make the OST, and it changes based on the gameplay. The fight itself, kind of any gimmicks that are thrown at you. And of course, the story, although on the side, especially for a boss rush game, is still really important at just conveying why we're fighting and kind of the stakes of the fight, just adding on to it. I'm going to rate each boss on these 3 factors, scaling them all from 1 to 10, with them all combining to make an overall rank. Now, it's going to be story as 20%, music as 30%, and fight as 50% of the overall rank. And these will all be combined into one 1 out of 10 scale, which I will be all having in the datasheet linked below in the description.
I swear I'll put you right back in your cell. There's an easy way and a hard way. You choose. Excellent choice.
His design is very unique, with him having 3 Japanese no masks and a floating circle behind him, while using a staff and an energy pistol that is pretty similar to yours. The concept of this boss is solid, with the idea that each of his 3 masks is a phase and has different abilities in both ranged and close combat. For a tutorial boss, he does his job extremely well, priming new players on key mechanics such as shooting your laser pistol, slashing your sword, parrying attacks, dodging, charging both your sword slash and your pistol slash, and also healing orbs. Quite literally almost everything is shown in this other than 3 things: charging your dodges themselves, charging your sword in close combat, and also that you can parry projectiles as well. So it's too bad that all 3 of these are important for survivability and maximizing damage, since you can parry fast or invincible projectiles instead of dodging, and when dodging through large waves or lasers, it's way easier when charging your dodge before actually trying to just time it well enough. And maximizing damage when close range, as whenever a boss is knocked down, you can always, and I mean always, get a charge on your sword. Of course, if you get hit, then you lose it, but it's way better than charging a charge slash that he might dodge or block, or just waiting for him to get back up, since I mean, the next attack that you'll do will do a pretty good chunk of his HP. These, of course, can be found in the controls menu, but you would assume the tutorial would show you all the controls. One more point to make is about your character's health bar. Whenever it's depleted, you lose 1 of your 3 health points. But something the game does not outright tell you is that you gain a health point whenever you deplete one of their health bars and win in close combat. This makes the game kind of a tug of war against the tougher bosses, as of course when you lose all 3 health points, the fight restarts. Moving past the tutorial part of this boss fight, this guy is perfect for the role, as his ego is so annoying. Throughout the fight, he constantly talks about how he's going to kill you in different ways and beat you up, and how you're completely useless, and blah 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 blah. And even in the end, when you beat him, he still won't stop talking, which is why it feels super satisfying to beat him, but obviously he's not always this easy. For your first playthrough, you will be forced into normal difficulty, which in my opinion is a balanced and good way to experience the game, but Furier, aka hard mode, is way more satisfying to play on, especially with this fight in specific. The Chain is the one and only boss in the game that has a completely different set of abilities and amount of health bars when changing game modes, making it only fair that we talk about both versions. We can see this difference with his final desperation phase, since this is the final attack that a boss will throw, and these phases are what ends a lot of health bars, since their difficulty is sometimes harder than the entirety of that boss's fight before that one final phase. Here we can see the difference between the Chain's normal final attack and hard mode final attack, with it being mostly the same idea as you shoot through the wall projectiles while dashing over waves, but there's simply more projectiles, permanent projectiles that can't be destroyed, and more waves. Moving forward, I won't show any more normal gameplay just because Furier gameplay is more fun to watch, but regarding the Chain on Furier, he did feel way more justified talking all that smack, as it was a very intense, well done fight. The soundtrack as well had a great first song to be introduced to Fury, the producer being Danger, cooked up some heat with 6.24 being the title. There's normally also a reason for the names of the songs, but Danger is the sole exception as the producer, as he has a unique way of naming his songs, which is by using the exact time that he finished the song using the French format, which is seen with this one being called 6.24, and later songs in Fury 7.53 and 8.02, which I will mention when they come up.
You will be broken. You will go back to yourself.
Bravo! Excellent! What a thrill! Not your first time, right? Anyway, the good news, we're one step closer to freedom. The bad news, there's more out there waiting for us. But don't worry, I know them. I can help. Believe me, what's waiting at the end of all this is so worth the trouble. You and me, we're in the same boat now. Now let's get the hell out of here.
Also, a hidden achievement will happen when if you walk back to your cell, your rabbit friend will be there too. But before you get back to your cell, your rabbit is actually seen looking at the center of the arena, then confirming that the chain did activate the alarm, but saying, it doesn't matter, they have been waiting here forever anyways. Which questions just how long these jailers have been here, and also how long you have been here. When you get to your cell, he makes a comment about how good of a torture device they have, and that it's a good thing he was here, and saying to take one last good look at this place, because you guys are leaving for good. While walking towards our next destination, the rabbit has a lot to speak to you regarding this next jailer, and that there is no jailer, and that she is also a prisoner of this place just like you. Over the course of his dialogue, you can make out her story to be something like this. The strap came through one day looking for something, but was wild and did not speak their language, destroying a lot in the process. They couldn't make sense of her, so they locked her in a cage, which is assumed to be the very prison we are about to find her in. However, ever since you showed up, something changed. Then you came along, and they did even worse. Way worse. It all went so wrong. This is talking about human experiments on the strap by either jailers or other potential unknown scientists. These experiments drove her even more insane and wild, which made her attempt to escape, but even she couldn't break out of the prison. They had to build up all these layers, so she couldn't get out. She tried to tear through these walls so many times, but they just kept growing back around her. These experiments were done because of you, meaning they were probably trying to make her have the ability to finally kill you, but lost control of her along the way, which is why she is now the second person to fight you, since this was their original attempt to finally kill you, and the first jailer is to just sit there and watch over your cell and send out an alarm if you attempt an escape. Now knowing the mess you're about to step into, you prepare yourself. So this is a really cool boss concept and one of my favorites in the game. You've been told that this person is literally crazy and being kept inside a prison, so you have no idea what to expect. But then you see her pop up and now you think,
Oh, Lord.
her design is just like what was described to you. An insane prisoner who is strapped to a chair, with the laser cannon on her head probably being one of the designs to make her more deadly. She is literally insane. You can see her seize up multiple times in the fight and in the beginning start to ignore you and simply bash her head onto a wall. She mostly uses her laser beam to attack you in the beginning, either doing timed shots or a sweeping laser beam that you have to dodge through. As you progress the fight, she gets closer and closer to being free from her segue, eventually pulling out a sight that will give her multiple melee combos and make her close combat more difficult. When she finally does get free of her segue and is now no longer a mall cop and is free on all fours, she then continues to fight, but how an animal would, leaping at you, trying to grapple you and shoot you in the face with their laser beam point blank. The part where she disappears after she escapes also makes you start to sweat for real. The final desperation phase is well done, with a solid bullet hell into one giant sweeping laser that gets faster and faster every time, requiring you to charge your dash in the beginning since it's so large, but eventually you can just start to dash through since it's going so fast. Carpenter Brett made a fantastic soundtrack for this fight, and Enrage is a simple but fitting name for this one. walk-up has our rabbit companion describing the next jailer, saying that he is a master of time, but then bringing up how he didn't warn him, and how he chose to stay here. Our man on the rocks. He knew a lot. He even figured out why you were sent to us. Look at the sky, he's kept saying. The dot and the sun. But no one listened. The rabbit is upset with him since he claimed to know everything but did nothing. This is also very interesting as the rabbit says this person knows the reason you were sent here and that maybe it's somewhere in the sky, meaning not on this planet, and the dot on the sun potentially meaning another planet or star, but we have no way to interpret what he meant and clearly no one else understood or listened to him either. You finally approach an old man sitting on a rock.
Welcome, stranger. I have been looking forward to this moment. I foretold your escape, but not how far you would get. I am glad you made it to me. Time is a picture in motion through eternity. When you appeared, everything got still. You made the picture stop. I'm here to make my clocks tick again. I can't kill you, but I can remove you from my here and now, capture you and bring you back until the next cycle.
By the way, this guy's design legit looks like he was copy and pasted right out of Afro Samurai, especially with the fact that their numbers are the same, being the third person and the third jailer, and they are both wearing the same color headphones, and then someone just slapped hella G-Shocks. This brings up a great parallel with Afro Samurai being the numbered system that's also used for the assassin group being numbered 1 through 6, and Furi having supposedly 1 to 9 jailers. When you appeared, the picture stopped, and I'm here to make my clocks tick again. He used to be able to see into the future, but not anymore with you in prison. He could not predict how far the stranger would make it because it would not make any sense for him to predict his own death in the future beyond that. Him not being able to see how far the stranger would go is a clear indication that he would die in this fight, but that's just something that he didn't want to accept. One last thing about his dialogue is, I can't kill you, but I can remove you from my here and now, which, along with the fact that he knows you have tried to escape before and that he refers to you dying and ending up at the beginning as a cycle, means that you are truly immortal, as thought before, and that these people did need to try and make a weapon to destroy you, as discussed with the last boss, the strap. Cool boss concept, with the whole concept of time being incorporated into the fight really well. Also, he is never that hostile and is saying that you are only hurting yourself, which is a huge hint on how you should tackle this fight. By not shooting as much, there are less projectiles created, which makes the charge shot the bread and butter of this fight. This is because he will either set up pillars or barriers that you will need to shoot, but whenever you shoot them, they will create projectiles. Other than being a little tedious, this fight is done well, especially with the close combat fights where time is literally being stopped, making it so you can no longer use your blaster, just the sword in a duel against this teleporting old man. There are ways to make this fight easier, and it's by 1, charge shots only, and creating a rhythm with it, and 2, grabbing the health orbs that appear as soon as he stops time, as they change from projectiles into healing orbs as soon as he gets into close combat. With this, you can normally grab 1 to 3 health orbs on top of parrying his hits to gain your health back. His desperation phase is also very hard, and the mess of projectiles on your screen is hard to navigate, and it definitely gave me some trouble. The soundtrack by Wave Shaper slaps, and it's called Wisdom of Rage, which means the utilization of one's rage to gain the wisdom of clarity, which makes sense in this case, as the whole fight you gotta calm down to gain a rhythm for the fight.
Look to Aye, stranger. Therein lies your answer.
The whole walk up was interesting, as your rabbit friend talks to you about this jailer's past, which begs the question of why does he know these guardians so well? Before this boss, he only generally described the bosses beforehand, saying the first one tortured you and that you should kill him and free yourself, which makes sense. The second one is insane and forced to be here just like you, and that the third one is an old man with time powers who just chose to be here. Now, it's not only a description, but him telling you that he was contaminated and to ignore what he is saying, if he can even speak. Another thing to note is that we are now in a sewer rather than the outside world we were just in. In this sewer, along with the music, helps with the overall uneasy vibe of this place, like we were just teleported into some kind of contaminated room or plagued room, or some kind of thing lives in here. The rabbit mentions years of evolution, culture, civilization, great intellect, wonders of nature, bam! Wiped out. It is assumed that he's talking about the boss's home and that you destroyed his entire civilization in the blink of an eye. This would also reaffirm the idea that you are some kind of walking natural disaster, since the first jailer mentioned that you were a destroyer, a weapon, a bringer of death, and also how you managed to block the third jailer's ability to see the future, which could just be because you would eventually kill him, and also for the second boss that they would go so far just to create something that would hopefully destroy you. The rabbit finally regards you and your character, talking about how he could have left you frying on your rock, but he didn't, saying that he has heard some bad stuff, but that he has made his decision to free himself. Why should their world be more important than mine? He clearly is somewhat of a prisoner of this place like you are, and wants to escape badly, enough that he even freed you, knowing the rumors about you.
Look at the filth around you. Darkness. Look at me. Don't look so horrified. You're staring at yourself. You did this to me. Finally.
You walk onto a pond of sewage, and from around you, the boss emerges, which means that this water is either deceptively deep or that our character is now just straight up walking on water, which just, wow, I didn't know we were Jesus. The boss itself also looks like something that was experimented on. The things he says about you are definitely interesting, especially since you have been told to ignore his crazy babble. He calls you a catastrophe, a disaster. Practically talks about how you ruined his life and the place around him as you destroyed everything. And now he can finally take revenge. The fight itself is confusing, but not in a bad way, but as in a fight mechanic. The screen becomes blurry whenever hit. Many attack patterns move in strange patterns. He dives into the water to do sneak attacks and also creates clones as well. The fight before the final phase is really good, but his desperation phase takes this fight to a whole new level, creating a grid that you need to play around while waves of projectiles come at you. The dizzying water effect on screen made this part way harder, as there was so much going on already. I died 3 times in a row to this phase, and it's kinda obvious to see why. One last interesting note is that this character has a lot of parallel to that of, spoilers for Afro Samurai, Gino in Afro Samurai, who vowed to have revenge against the main character when he was hurt previously by a battle caused by Afro. This is also shown with the similar helmets and bodysuits that are used as health supports, and they both say the same line as, "I vow to have my revenge." Gino, just like Scale, also has no other interests such as the headband, which is the main reason people are after him in Afro Samurai, and how the Scale does not care about protecting the planet from you or being here for some greater purpose in Furi, but rather he just wants to destroy you and see the pain and suffering of the main character, just like Gino. These two have almost the same goals, just the suffering of the main character. The soundtrack made by Lauren is well done for this boss fight, although if you were to listen to this on your own time, I might consider you to be insane. The song name is Set Me Free, which in this fight is referring to the Scale, who wants to be set free of his anguish either by death or his preferred route, revenge, which is why the title is second person, as he is asking to be set free.
Will we share his fate, or will life take an unexpected turn? Hope comes from the strangest places.
The rabbit tells you something crucial about this next jailer, and that he previously defeated you with an army of 100 men, although you don't know if the rabbit is telling the truth to you. Throughout the walk-up, he tries to bring out your anger and says that you need to take your revenge, which potentially is to urge you to ignore the reality of your situation and be selfish.
He who knows no fear, knows no courage. I take mine from you. We are what we fight for. I look at you, stranger, and I see nothing. Desolation. Death. You are alone. I am fighting for something much greater than this. Can you imagine the strength that gives me? I doubt it. And so your fight ends here.
His design is that of a soldier, wearing armor and a helmet, while having a sword and a shield. The energy that flows through his armor is also similar to yours, but since he has a helmet, that energy goes all the way up, even creating bull horns. In my opinion, he has definitely one of the coolest designs. One thing to note is that the hand has a child with him in prison, probably out of duty since he previously defeated you and wanted to keep his connection with his son. However, this is a cruel reality to set on one's son, and as he is now trapped in prison, just like you are, with potentially no way out. The game bakers did comment that the hand is the only jailer allowed to bring in family with him, since he is the one who originally brought you down. The fight is intense, as well as the drive that makes the fight. Just like the previous boss, this one has a past with you. He constantly says that you are alone and have nothing. He fights for a reason, a purpose, and has a duty that brought him here. The boss mostly utilizes his sword and shield, while occasionally charging projectiles from his sword and also charging at you with his energy bullhorns. The fight itself is intense, but another thing that is interesting is the amount of control the hand has in the fight over you, since you are really unable to get a hit in unless he does an attack. His shield and attacks leave no time to get a hit in if he is not the one charging. This plays to his potential at being a leader and having control over the situation, basically just trying to use your impatience against you. Eventually, he throws away his shield and slowly tries to take you on a sword v sword duel, with his final desperation phase adding on to this as well. For this phase, he creates a small arena for you and him to fight in, occasionally firing in laser beams, ending with one long slugfest where he tries to hit you probably around 20 times in a row. This is definitely one of my favorite songs out of the whole soundtrack. And the title is What We Fight For, which clearly the we in this case is either the jailers themselves or humanity as a whole, as it's clear they fight for each other and for a greater cause, which is seen through his kid and him being here in the first place. The The fight clearly had an effect on the stranger, as he is seen looking back right after the fight, which is a sign of doubt. This fight signified potentially a no turning back point, as you have now just knowingly taken away a kid's father, but who knows what is yet to come. In this slight second you are seen looking back, I imagine that the stranger accepted his role as being this destroyer, but that he still feels emotions clearly and is more what these jailers are describing him as. The walk up to this fight has your friend talking non-stop. Clearly something is different about this upcoming boss. This one, upstairs, arrogant, self-righteous, cold. That's her. She started it all. She even got me locked up, and that you should not listen to her little show that she is about to perform for you.
Walk with me. It was all a mistake. The cell, the restraints, the guardians. We can make this right. You can't go to my world, but you can be free here. Look at what I'm offering. This can be your home. I'll take care of you. I'll tell you the tales of my world. You will tell me yours. There is so much to enjoy here.
It was confirmed that she made the plan to trap you inside the prison worlds and keep you from the free world, as the game bakers put it. The song is doing this for her world, yes, but also because she wants to be seen as a hero. You can't go to my world, but you can be free here. The use of my here shows her arrogance already, with her claiming that it's her world and that she won't allow you to go there, but she is allowing you to stay here. This is all controlling dialogue, as although she believes she is giving you a choice, in reality she wants you to stay here in order to continue her peace and to continue living as a hero. She tells you that we should exchange stories about our worlds, implying that she thinks you are not from this planet, which is now the second time, with the first time being the line with the whole dot on the sun. Her whole personality and arena are attempting to reflect that of an angel, with her offering you to stay in Eden, and that is she is simply punishing you for disturbing the peace, but her personality changes from a sweet angel into a bitter person. There is an interesting Christian parallel with the Garden of Eden being offered to you, aka Adam and Eve situation, where we reject the offer, and that is the same as eating from the apple, as we are rejecting taking sanction in the garden, where everything you might need will be here. Of course, the only response to this is God's wrath. This person gives you the option to end the game here and now, giving you a different ending, all while waiting 2.5 minutes. But it just gives you a short cutscene and then boots you to the main menu with your save file deleted. This is a cool alternative ending, but of course this would be very out of character for the stranger to give up because of this reasoning. I had more reason to give up at the hand before this, as you willingly take the father of someone, while this egomaniac wants to preserve her peace and title. Her design in this fight also reflects that of a makeshift angel, with her having almost a halo and wings, but instead it's just energy. I was your only hope. She tries to reason with you in the beginning and even in the fight, but towards the end, her attitude changes as she says that you are the arrogant one and that you deserve those chains and shocks. This fight is decent, nothing crazy, with her sometimes flying at you with high speeds being the one unique aspect of the fight. Other than that, she generally stays away from you and tries to use waves and lasers to trip you up. I do like the arena, with falling being an extra challenge though. The desperation phase in this fight makes it go from easy to hard, with 6 pillars being spawned, and every pillar being spawned is another added projectile on screen, and it gets to be a mess by the last one. This soundtrack was by the Toxic Avenger and is well done and fitting, as well as the name being Make This Right. Clearly her interpretation of this would be for you to stay there.
This will eat you up inside for the rest of your days.
At the end, she says that this will eat you up inside forever, which is when the character hesitates slightly, as voices can be heard, potentially them being the souls trapped inside your sword, but you have already come so far, so you swing down. I saw you hesitate in that last fight.
I like it. It gives me hope. Oh, it's you. Well, I took care of this one. It was really tough. I'm no fighter like you, but I got my way. After the last jailers, I felt you deserved a little more from me. Call it my contribution to our escape. We're in this together. Now more than ever.
This is where we are given a large amount of information for the first time, and it's from your very own rabbit companion who is with you the whole time, who reveals that he is the grand architect that designed the prison, and he tells you the reasons behind why he built it. He built this for you to make sure that you could never escape, as he has designed other prisons in the past before, but even he could not escape this one. That's how perfect he made this prison. He tried over and over and over again to escape it, but he could never, which potentially led to a mental decline, causing him to consider a different option. In order to free himself and get back to his daughter, he was so desperate to escape that he eventually freed you, the reason the prison was made in the first place. He didn't wish to kill his comrades, who are the jailers who guard the prison you are in. These are not jailers, by the way, but rather their actual title are guardians. The song had originally recruited these guardians as well as your rabbit companion in order to create these prison worlds that kept you from escaping, as it was his only choice. It is also interesting to note how everyone here is here of their own will except him. The first guy does it for fun, the second was in prison anyways, the third guy wanted to be there to see what happened, the fourth guy wants revenge, the fifth guy does this for his son and humanity, also has the skills to have taken you down before, the sixth put you here in the first place, and who knows for the next three, but quite literally everyone there wants to be there except for the creator of the whole place. Before this, it is clearly hinted that your rabbit friend had some connection to these guardians, but it was always unclear why he knew so much information. Your rabbit companion, whose real name is The Voice, is the seventh guardian that you do not fight, which is confirmed by the game makers. Which makes sense that the seventh room of the prison, which is his own, he claims to have defeated the guardian inside already for you, calling it his contribution to our escape. And in an interview, the story was said to be influenced by the story of Daedalus and the Minotaur, where Daedalus found himself to be trapped within his own labyrinth and had to free the Minotaur to find his way out. I find it cool that this whole story is kind of based on some Greek mythology, and that the game makers care a lot for the story in this game, while the gameplay itself is phenomenal. One last thing that is noticeable in this chamber is the Scales Arena being shown. This looks different than what the Scales Arena was when you passed through it. This is because you originally landed in what Scales' home was, which was then contained and turned into his arena. This was all confirmed by game makers on Twitter, saying that his arena is where you will landed with all your destructive power. This makes a lot of sense now when you think about the Scales dialogue, who's the fourth guardian, as he alone said a lot of things about his surrounding area, and it makes a lot of sense why that's the only arena in the game which is completely contained and has no outside. Now that you know why he freed you, and before with his earlier quote, you press on forward knowing full well your role in this. You are a plague, not fit to even be on Earth, destroying everything. But even despite that, you will push past humanity's defenders in order to attain not just your freedom anymore, but for the both of yours. However, maybe knowing that this would be your last chance to convince you to turn back, the strongest of the Guardians awaits. The soundtrack during the interlude is by Scattle and is named Love and Madness, which is a phrase that the voice mentions to you while in the room.
Line between love and madness. Time will tell.
The walk-up has you being scanned, which is amazing for us as a player since it provides details about our character that we have no idea about. She examines our pistol, calls it a laser pistol, our sword being a phase sword, and our character alone, with our top speed being 73 kilometers per hour or around 45 miles per hour. Now, to help with perspective, a cheetah goes 70 miles per hour. And the fastest human being ever recorded, being Usain Bolt, running a full-on sprint is 23.5 miles per hour. Now, it also mentions that your heartbeat is going at 8 beats per minute. And now all that is a lot to take in, considering you are twice as fast as the fastest human ever recorded on full sprint, and your heartbeat is not just unnaturally low, it's too low. I shouldn't be alive if I had a heartbeat of 8 beats per minute, obviously. Which begs the question, what exactly are you?
Now you're mine. Go get him, boys. This is not a drill.
Going to the fight itself, this is not only a unique fight since it's hard and fun to play through, but the idea of a sniper boss is such a cool idea, using the mines and invincibility, and none of them are too annoying. In order to actually fight her, you have to catch her and avoid being sniped. But once you get her out of her invisibility, you can then get a chance at one of her health bars. Throughout the fight, she will have added more drones and more mines, while all having a very, very unique combat cycle, using even walls itself against you since she does have control over the entire arena. The fight itself is really good, but now the desperation phase leaves zero room for error, as if you don't move quickly, you get sniped in one shot. But if you move too quickly, you take damage from movement errors. This is by far, I think, the hardest desperation phase out of the entire game, and I think for very good reason. You could potentially try and cheese the game with a clever immortality frame trick, which would work by getting hit with a rave right before getting sniped. However, I imagine that her timing is not always the same, and that I don't even know if it would work, since it might just negate that. Also, her design is just cool. I like the hat design and the all camo, allowing her to blend into her environment. This soundtrack by Carpenter Brett in this fight is easily one of, if not my favorite song in the entire game, with really only one other rivaling it. Its name being You're Mine is also just very fitting for her character.
That's enough. Assuming manual control.
That was sweet. You beat her at her own game. She was a cheater anyway.
Now, the Edge. This man trained to fight you since day one. These guardians are placed here and cannot leave either, just like the architect, which drove some of them insane clearly, but this man just trained and looked forward to this. One thing that the rabbit says is, I tried to stay and finish my work for years, but the one thing I could never forget, her laughter. This line of dialogue, although not new information, hits hard.
You sure took your time. I was concerned you wouldn't make it this far. This is a big day for me. I've been waiting a long time for this moment. Let me show you.
The Edge's design looks similar to you, but also his sword looks similar too. He uses two swords, with the smaller one being a parrying sword. These are likely to be based on the Japanese katana and wakizashi. The fight is strictly a sword duel, so you start out in close combat already. The fight itself is difficult, but nothing too hard once you learn how to deal damage, but only one at a time, and you need to strike him in between hits. This is the only boss in the game that is not affected by either a power slash or a perfect parry, resulting in a quick time event where you both get pushed back. If you ever lose a life, instead of mocking you like the other Guardians, he insists that you get back up. The Edge uses plenty of mix-ups to try and break through your guard and catch you, making you really focus on parrying correctly and looking for when you can get a hit in. As you manage to get him to his second half, the Edge picks up his ore and jumps to a new stage. On this new stage, you can no longer go anywhere but left or right to dodge his few projectiles and mostly parry his attacks, making it go from a 3D fight to a 2D fight. His desperation phase changes the entire lighting to be darkened, as his armor glows red and yours glows blue, making for a nice little contrast. His attacks in this are brutal, and getting hit does 2 to 3 damage, meaning you have to be close to perfect with this last phase. The ore used by him is likely to be a reference to Miyamoto Musashi, who was one of the most famous samurai. One story about Musashi claims that while he was taking a rowboat onto an island to an opponent who awaited a duel, he carved a sword out of the ore, and when he arrived onto the island and defeated the opponent, he used only his ore sword. Musashi was also famously a proponent of the two-sword style and had a personality similar to the Edge, which is about dedication to the craft and obsession with improvement. The soundtrack is quality as well and fits in with the fight, with the title being something memorable, as of course that's all he wants. Even the final cutscene is incredible compared to the others, with the Edge jumping in the air, readying his ore, and the stranger jumping to meet him in one final clash. And after, the voice practically celebrates by telling you that that was the toughest guy there and that he couldn't have done it without you, which makes you wonder what easy enemy we're about to face. Now, the voice makes it clear that he has some contempt for this boss, but whether he thinks it's because she isn't suited to be here as the final defender, or even be here at all, it's more up to the player's interpretation of the voice as a character.
So, one last time. The jailer is the key. Kill her, and you will be free.
You're not what I was expecting.
Her design looks like she was just recruited off the ice hockey team, with massive speakers attached to her back so she can blast music. She even carries her hockey stick and skates around. She also clearly seems to be the youngest of the Guardians. We do know that the song recruited all the Guardians in the first place, so I think the voice is more mad at the fact that some teenager is here as the last defender, since he says, how many do we need to even sacrifice? He is more upset that it came to a point that the song was willing to use a teenager or young adult, since the beat is clearly not as old as any of the other characters, especially since they experienced the same isolation that drove the voice to free you. A young person volunteering themselves just to experience constant isolation. And if you were to ever come, do you think she actually would have put up a fight? Of course not. She was always going to lose if you ever actually came this far, making it seem to the voice as a complete waste of her life. I mean, this is a pretty solid fight. This one is solely a ranged fight and a projectile nightmare, but she goes down relatively quick. She never believed that you are a monster and is just trying to simply convince you to turn back. And she also wants to protect the Earth and says that this is the best chance she has. The concept of having to catch up to her is well done. When you finally get to the end, a cutscene plays. She is seen using a giant snowblower to blast you back, but it has zero effect as you leap through and prepare for her final phase that she doesn't have, because she has no desperation phase, but rather she is crippled by your attack and is now pleading with you to go back, also saying how she's hurt. Rather than the best chance at stopping us and defeating us, she has the best chance at convincing us to stop our madness. However, even she eventually ends up calling you a monster, saying that the others were right. This is a well done fight, which doesn't need to be hard for any reason, as it does a great job at conveying the story and emotions. The soundtrack for this being called You Are the End is self-explanatory, with us finally being the end of her and her world, but also her being the end to our struggle. Now we have finally achieved our long-awaited freedom.
Please, hold my hand.
This is it, my friend. It's been hard, I know. But she was the last. Finally, going through that door. It's everything we have been fighting for. You are not who you were when you first landed out there. We all have choices to make. We all have to decide what's worth fighting for.
You finally are freed from the prison worlds and are sent back to the free world, only to discover that everyone that you killed to get here was truly trying to save their planet, as everything decays around you as you walk forward. It's important to also note that the player no longer has a set path that they can auto-walk in, which means that the player is in full control, but with no specific path ahead. As you walk around with the credits rolling, there are buildings and some structures, trees and water, but everything seems to be abandoned. As you walk near these buildings and structures, even the foundations of them start to degrade. The trees also lose their lives when you walk by, with their leaves falling off. As the screen starts to fade to black, it seems that the Guardians were right, with this being the reality of the situation, a depressing ending, but one that was told to you many times before. But as soon as you expect the game to go to the main menu screen, you're given control of your character once again. You can even now sprint for once in the game to help explore this open world that you are now in. As you go around, there are more similar buildings and structures, but there is one that stands out, a giant tower in the distance. But before that, a quick note on the soundtrack playing during the credits by The Toxic Avenger is the one I mentioned before being one of my favorites and potentially rivaling your mine. This one is called My Only Chance, which refers to the voice since you were his only chance to see his daughter again. Speaking of the voice, this is where you can find him, as you come across a small village next to the water.
So now you know. Maybe you think I'm insane, or maybe you understand. You were my only chance. I hoped it would change you. I think it did. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is what you are going to do.
A cutscene shows the voice and his daughter together, with his daughter holding a small purple rabbit doll, which explains why the voice had a purple rabbit mask on, as a reminder of his daughter. That same mask gave him the constant memory of his daughter being back on the planet, and potentially in harm's way, with how the world was since your arrival, which is why he needed to free you. The voice then says that he had hoped this experience would change the stranger, and says, I think it did, but then says that doesn't matter and nothing matters. The only thing that matters is what you do next. He then walks off with his daughter, leaving his staff behind. As they leave, you are now left with nobody else, as they are the only people in the open world, and there's nothing else in this small overworld area other than the tower, so you go to investigate.
You. Again. You took so much from me. I will make you pay.
This boss is only playable after a player beats the game on Furi, aka normal mode, for the first time, and it can be accessed from the main menu in the One More Fight DLC, but chronologically, he ambushes you in the tower. The Flame says that he is fighting for the people you have killed, name dropping a few, for Seda, for Iman, for Demas, for the ones who fell. The Game Bakers said that the Flame is not a guardian. They also tweeted that he was alongside the Hand in the first wave who tried to stop you. Now, based on that information in the dialogue, forums, AMAs, and tweets, here's what his story is in full. The Flame was a part of the raid that captured you, originally being commanded under the Hand, with hundreds of allies in total. The raid location was at the Scale's home, aka arena, where you landed. It is assumed that during the raid, the Scale was recovered from the site and given surgery. Also, during that raid, you managed to murder almost everyone, but the Hand eventually was able to overwhelm you with the help of numbers. In the fight, you left the Flame in a damaged state, which can be seen with his shoulder being damaged on one of his arms and his mostly cybernetic body, which would mean that you damaged him so much that the Flame had to undergo surgery as well. I think the Flame knew the Hand would be able to do a better job at being the Guardian, but also that the Flame was out of commission because of you anyways. If you were to ever free yourself, he knew exactly where you would be and when to find you, meaning he knew where the prison's exit was. So now he could finally avenge his fallen allies and now his leader, the Hand. This would explain why he is so angry with the stranger in the first place, other than how you almost destroyed their planet. However, the Flame was not always a DLC boss, he was in the game itself. The Flame's intro cutscene was not in the PS4 and PC released. Furi first released on PC and PS4 in July, and the Xbox One version later that year in December. There was a delay in versions due to a contract and a time released with Microsoft. These extra months helped the Game Bakers refine the game and also added the Flame boss and cutscene to the game itself. The Game Bakers decided to not change this for the PC and PS4 versions due to potential speedrun leaderboards, coding that it would require for both the PC and PS4 versions, and the fact that the Flame just doesn't fit that well into the game since he lacks context. Every boss before this has had their ideals or character delved into at least somewhat, but not the Flame. He quite literally shows up out of nowhere, says names that you can't recognize, and then nothing else is ever explained, since after you defeat him, you keep going up the elevator. This is why this fight is great for the One More Fight DLC, since it's a quality fight that I think people should play, but his story just doesn't fit as well as all the others. I think they potentially could have had this character if he was hinted at or explained better, but I also think the game bakers potentially didn't have time. Regardless, the game bakers keeping the Flame as a DLC boss and not in the main game other than Xbox was the best option, since imagine he shows up without the context that I just provided. Also, a fun fact, I think his name is the Flame only because of his cigarette, since there is nothing else that is related to a flame, but his design is quite nice. The Flame's fight is tough and really well done, with his theme of his number of hands being the number of attacks he uses. In the phase where he has 4 hands in total, he uses all 4 hands. But when he goes and rips one of them off and only has 3, he continues with its pattern but goes in a 3 pattern attack instead of the original 4. I can go into depth about the fight itself, but it is self-explanatory as it contains some old patterns mixed up with unique patterns that make for a fight so good that I'm glad they at least kept it in as a DLC. The Desperation phase is a cherry on top, with him being centered in the middle while you are on the outer ring, dodging plenty of his attacks and then finishing it with one last close combat. This fight never seems too unfair, has plenty of mix-ups, and honestly was very fun. The music is also amazing, probably being one of my favorite tracks in Furi, called Shambles by Scattle.
Acquiring rider. Resuming flight plan.
Something that should be noted as well is that you can breathe in space, as the stranger almost looks at peace now that he has finally escaped that planet. As you approach space, you notice the series of arenas that held you captive until now, looking almost lifeless as it appears unmoving and darkened compared to the background. But then again, that was your work that did that. However, you see a glint in the stars that appears to be some sort of ship. As you approach the ship and its intricate entrance design, you see yourself or yourselves clones. These clones have the same gear that you have on right now, meaning that this gear you're using is definitely your original gear, unlike the sword and pistol. And that signature red jacket and cape is also not his own, but rather he got it at some point when he was away, since none of his clones are seen wearing anything other than the suit of armor and the black bodysuit. The hair on these clones is short enough compared to your luscious long hair to also prove just how long you have been away from this place. Are you the original, or are you just an escaped clone now finally returning back to his home? You head in to find your answers. You come to find a giant blue floating hologram of 4 robotic hands. This thing also has a giant brain inside the hologram and a third eye as well. he welcomes back the Rider, which we now know is the character you have been playing as the whole time, being referred to as the Stranger before this. He asks you for your planet report. It comes back inconclusive, making the choice yours on what to report. You can assimilate the planet and agree that it is ready, or you can cancel the invasion and attack what you now know is the mothership. This mothership has plenty of clones that can replace you. This is just one of the many planets that they are invading and have invaded. So you are up against an impossible threat. Realistically, you are very insignificant in their whole plan. So what is your choice? You decided to invade, knowing that you will be destroying the very freedom of the man who saved you in the first place, and who is now with his daughter finally. Knowing that you cannot fight back against the very place you came from, since if you could level an entire planet on your own, just imagine what the clones could do if they saw you as a threat. The troops are launched, and you can be seen leading the charge, showing that potentially you do have some seniority, whether or not because of your age or because it's your planet. The final frame of this closes with the invasion coming down on the world, setting everything ablaze, and the architect holding his daughter closely as their world ends. An absolutely beautifully done ending, but let's be honest, after all we fought for, are we really going to let some floating head tell us what to do? We managed to cut down some of the toughest of the planet's defenders, and if anything, the amount of time spent in that prison was essential for training. We are no longer just a rider, now you have become so much more. He tells you to disarm and says rider malfunction, as if you were supposed to follow his orders, then activates the security system, which sends 4 drones that surround you. Proceed with rider neutralization. The fact that there is a security system, calls you a malfunction, and has a normalized act of neutralizing riders means that there have been people like you before. Riders that were sent out to planets for the sole purpose of conquering, although what happens after the invasion is never specified. But these riders had something that happened to them which caused them to turn against the mothership. Now first, let me start off by saying that people enjoy the fight with the Edge due to it being close combat only. Now what if I told you this was the exact opposite? That's what this fight is. Just a pure bullet hell. Most people absolutely hate this fight, way more than I originally thought. Just about every tier list ranking bosses, people will slap this bad boy at the bottom 9 times out of 10. This fight is not even that bad. The bullet patterns are pretty cool and interesting, and I like how you can take down the drones or just focus on the hands. One does more damage to the boss and the other helps you avoid damage. It is somewhat difficult to multitask and process what all 8 entities are doing on screen, but this becomes trivial when I mention that you have big lasers. Finally, now you can do what the bosses did to you and shred through this boss's HP while having amazing range and the ability to not get blocked like normal bullets. Tie this in with the parry mechanic, allowing for one to send back projectiles, and you should do just fine. It just becomes an all-out brawl, where if you want to have less stuff happening on screen, just focus on the drones for a bit. The desperation phase is just a really long attack pattern with so many projectiles. Overall, it is a hard fight for sure, but nothing can justify the number of complaints that I've seen about it. I know most people still think this fight is bad since it does lack some variety, and it can certainly get boring quick if you end up dying, especially multiple times, but as someone who is pretty good at bullet hells, in my opinion, this fight is not as hard as people will tell you if you have played anything like Enter the Gungeon or Hades. I totally understand why people dislike this fight, however, I still think it has its charms. You saved them this time. Who will save them next? That's the worst illusion, believing you can have a lasting impact. This clearly hits you hard as the writer can be seen glaring at him for making that comment. You make your way out as you just proved him wrong anyways. Won against the system and you won. As you make your way out of the exploding ship, the final scene of Furi plays out. From the viewpoint of the planet, the architect and his daughter are seen holding hands, looking up to the giant explosion and you, the star shining by. The camera then shows the voice visibly smiling, as if he was right to trust in you. After completing both endings, as well as the hidden ending with a song, many people would simply close out the game and think about how the game was while they go about looking for their next game to play. However, this is not at all what this game has to fully offer. Not only is there one more DLC fight unlocked when you defeat the flame, but it's the most difficult one in the entire game. The Bernard fight is a polygon man who proceeds to utilize every single boss's moveset to try and take you down. Bernard is beloved by the game bakers as the ultimate test dummy. The difficulty for this fight is locked at Furier, as it should be. He has 9 life bars in total compared to the average boss having 4 to 6. For Bernard's first life bar, he will use the first Guardian, the chains, attack pattern. Then, in his second, he will use the second Guardian, the straps, and then so on. This fight has this pattern continue until the 8th life bar, with the beat being the ranged phase and the edge being the close combat phase. Then, after going through all that fighting and relearning boss's patterns, for his desperation phase, he will proceed to go through every boss's moveset all in one last final attempt to kill you. Once you beat this fight, I would say that you have easily mastered Fury gameplay, as this is the ultimate challenge in the game. The Furier mode is hard, but still not comparable to this one single fight. It took me a while, but I eventually beat him too. After beating him, instead of receiving a concept art of that character, the player will be rewarded with the concept art of the voice and the rider. That covers every single boss in Fury, which means I can now finally present my personal final tier list as well as a soundtrack tier list for those fights. The datasheet with all my rankings and how I got to those rankings can be found in the description if you are interested, but there are still more things other than fights to talk about. The Game Bakers released yet another DLC not too long ago in May 2022. The Onimusha DLC provides a whole new experience with the ability to change the stances, which affects speed and damage drastically, making for a completely different fighting style. I guarantee her character is at the top of speedruns with the ability to raise damage and speed, but the DLC and speedrunning Fury are topics for future videos. Published on November 30th, 2023, the Game Bakers themselves made a short 8-bit style remake of Fury, turning it into a 2D fighting game with many similar mechanics to the original game, it being called Fury Demake. Parrying in this is really hard unless you use the D-pad for it. Other than that, it was really fun to play, and once beaten on Furier, the player will unlock the Onimusha character, who has her similar mechanics as well. Overall, this was a super fun little side game with a really nice art style and its own soundtrack on its own. They only went ahead and remade the first boss, but I could easily imagine myself playing this game if the whole game was redone in this style. The game is completely free, meaning that people that don't own Fury can still enjoy this little remake. Now at this point, with the DLCs beaten, most people would be done with this game, as to be fair, you have played through the entirety of the game's content. However, the difficulty of the game drastically changes things. Once played through once in Fury, also known as normal mode, a player will unlock a hard mode, which is called Furier. It is said to be the challenge for masters of combat. I believe the game should be played in this mode, but I have no problem with the difficulty it sets, although I think it would potentially be nice to have the option off the bat. It fits with many of the characters better, making their playstyles more unique and satisfying to win each fight. Understandably, they have Promenade or Story mode that simply makes the fights easier, which is for people who might struggle with Furi's combat system or some specific boss. Since not every person playing this game has had a previous experience with similar games or games in general, which can make it a difficult challenge for people even on this easier difficulty. I've seen reviews for people in this situation, and although that many things are certainly enjoyable when playing at its highest difficulty, I think as long as it's challenging to you as a player, it will be more rewarding once you finally get past that one boss or phase. But even this problem has been solved with Invincible mode that allows for people to either enjoy the story as much as they need or get their much needed practice in. But of course, achievements and game unlocks are not possible in either of these game modes. After the player beats the game on Furier, the ending credits will conclude with one last statement from the game makers, being, "This game was meant to be a tool that players use and refine to master. Congratulations for playing the game the right way." The name of the game being Furi isn't actually a misspelling of Fury, but is actually based on the katakana of free, and katakana is the Japanese style used on words of foreign origin. Fury is then derived of free. There are two interesting achievements to point out that are faster than B and faster than M, which are the names of the combat designer and designer respectively. These achievements require you to beat their speedrun times of Furi, which clearly shows that they were masters of their own game. There are also several unused achievements found in the game's files, which include do your homework, which is watch all videos in the how to play menu, TGB code, which would unlock when the player inputs the TGB code at the main menu, and the We Will Restore You, which is change your mind at the last minute, which is potentially referring to another ending being the surrender ending. This was removed from the game, but the text files of this achievement, along with the mothership's removed dialogue, prove that there was a potential fourth ending. The mothership's missing dialogue includes, "You can still stop, we will forgive you, we will restore you," and "Good, back to who you really are." Just for fun, my guess at what this ending would have looked like was either halfway or maybe at the last phase, the mothership would offer you one last option to turn back, which makes sense as the missing dialogue seems to imply that the two of you went from enemies back to allies. One thing I wanted to bring up is that the promotion for Furi was very well done, with the game makers even setting up a concert in Paris in 2016, where it featured Carpenter Brud, Wave Shaper, Knight, and the Toxic Avenger. Seeing clips from it, I definitely would have enjoyed going to that, which also brings up a great point that most of the OST can be listened to just on their own. I personally have used a couple songs as gym songs, and it's a quality time. While doing research for the video, I came across a bunch of interviews talking about the game. Here are a couple of the interview quotes that I found the most interesting. You can pause to read the entire quote. Furi's creative director, Amaric Thoa, commented that originally 16 Guardians were planned out, but it was reduced to 10 and then 9 actual fights. Some were cut early, some were cut later due to money and time, but he said that he's glad since the ones that were kept stood out against the others. Furi was also animated at 30 FPS to make it so that fast gameplay could seem unhumanly fast, but still be able to be seen easily by the player, which I can say they got 100% right. And then here are some references they used to animate Furi, and even how he recorded himself to get the baseline for moves in the game, which I found very hilarious to read. This one, where the music style and the retro-futuristic setting came from. This is where Furi's gameplay was inspired from, the dual-stick shooter and beat-em-up sword fight, using bullet hells and super punch-out for inspiration, mostly about timing, reflexes, and tactics. Just a quote I like about how their design was to make their combat feel fair and how there is no upgrade or additional thing, just you, your skills, and the boss. Also, how the third boss is considered a difficulty peak and the seventh one as well, where the game makers like the difficulty and believe that the challenge requires perseverance so that you feel the satisfaction of winning. This is what the difficulty was originally, in that it was hard, but not unfair. This is how they first ended up working with Takashi Okazaki, and this is how Takashi Okazaki designed the characters based on very short gameplay briefs. I'll end this video with a quote from Furi's creative director, Amaric Thoa. "I think that because we are a small team and we are making a somehow niche game, it's our job to make this game different. It's our job to not make it for everyone. I hope this game won't please everyone, But for the players who do like it, it will be truly outstanding. If you managed to make it to the end of this video, please make sure to drop a like on the video. And if you want me to make more videos like this one, comment on what game I should cover next. Let me know what y'all think about these rankings, and is there anything I missed? And of course, thank you so much for watching to the end. The Anamusha, ooh, yeah.